going to touch a very, very, I think, probably the most difficult topic of all. It really applies to Tisha B'Av very much. Those who were here in Tisha B'Av when I spoke about this, the Gemara invites you to think about yourself and say that if you live in a generation that didn't see the temple rebuilt, then you are precisely the same sort of people, doing the precisely same sort of things that the people who got it destroyed in the first place are. How easy is that to hear?
Not very.
It's not very easy. It's never easy. It's never easy to confront the truth about yourself if the truth is not pleasant. If somebody wants to tell you you're brilliant and you're doing a great job and everybody loves you, bring it on, as I think they say in America. But if somebody wants to tell you that you're less than brilliant, you're not doing such a good job, and frankly people detest you, that I'm being played. Wherever I go in New York at the moment, as soon as I start to speak, I'm being attacked by air conditioning systems. That come on. Anyway, it's not easy here to hear criticism. And listen to this. This is a very interesting medrash. And the medrash says the following thing. Omer Reb Yossi. There's a rabbi called Reb Yossi. Jewish. Shlosha hein shetov yitzron alehem v'nishbaloi. There were three people whose Yetzer Hara came and tried to get them to do something that they felt they shouldn't do. And in order to beat the Yetzer Hara, they made an oath against him. Any idea what that means? Here's a trick. Here's a device that's very, very dangerous, so don't use this one. You have to have a very high and strong relationship with God for this to work. But suppose you're like Yosef, which is one of the examples we're going to give. You're like Yosef, and there's this beautiful woman who's trying to get you to do something which you know, if you do, will destroy you as a Jew, and actually would destroy the future of the Jewish people as well. But she's stunningly beautiful. Remember, she arranges that nobody is in the house. She's tried to seduce him several times before, and when she's trying to seduce him, she gives him all sorts of temptations, and he nearly gives in. The Talmud says he nearly gives in. Now, when it's finally balanced like this, right, what can you do to tip the scales that way? If it's perfectly balanced, it can go either way. So to strengthen your Yetzer Tov, the good side of your nature, you could say, I swear, by your name, Hashem, I won't do this. Now, you know that to make an oath in Jewish law is a very serious thing. So apart from giving in to your Yetzer Hara and doing something which God has forbidden, you're now ignoring the oath that you've made. That's bad. And therefore it'll give you the extra strength to resist your Yetzer Hara. That's the idea. Okay? I don't think that I'm strong enough to think that that would change me. I'm not such a good Jew. But there is such a technique. Are you with me? Yeah? Okay. So there's three. It says, three who the Yetzer Hara came to them, and they swore against an oath in order to defeat the Yetzer Hara. Yosef, David, and Boaz. Yosef, David, and Boaz. There's the three. Yosef, how do we know Joseph? Minayin Shanama says, so he said, when she said to him, commit adultery with me, he said, how could I do this great sin? Against Hashem. And I will sin against God. That was the oath that he made. So he was making an oath to prevent himself. With me? Does this make sense? Good. Good. Next one. David, that's when he could have killed Shaul HaMelech. Shaul HaMelech was after him. There was an opportunity to kill him. And he was tempted to do it, which halakhically he could have done. If somebody tries to kill you, then you can kill them to save your life. Again, he made an oath against his Yetzer Hara, and that's fine. And the last one is Boaz. What's the story of Boaz? What do you think? Where did he make an oath to withstand the temptations of his Yetzer Hara? Who's Boaz? Ruth. Boaz and Ruth. Who can tell me the story?
Naomi.
Oh!
Naomi tells her to go and spend the night by his feet.
Right. So Naomi says to do this. Oh, I know. Oh, here comes my assistant. Every week. That was Miriam again. My assistant.
You need to repeat the first 5 minutes.
Yeah, we're going to repeat it. Don't you worry. Yeah. Round of applause for Miriam. Anyway, where was I up to? Lost. Yeah. So when Naomi says to Ruth, go to Boaz, and what are you supposed to do? What you supposed to do? Sleep in cupboards. That's a nice way of putting it. That's right. So she's supposed to, well, jump into his bed. Okay, you might get quite a fright one night if you wake up and suddenly there's a strange woman at the bottom of your bed, right? So here we have this this story here. So this is what happens. Listen to this. What happened with Boaz? So basically, she appears at the foot of his bed. Now, he says, the Medrash says an amazingly interesting thing. So what happens is she appears. And Boaz, when he says to her, by Hashem's name, stay here all night. Okay? By Hashem's, it's funny language. You find this in Rus, Gimel, Yud Gimel, Chai Hashem, an oath, Shifki Adabaker, sleep here till the morning. Rabbi Yudin and Rabbi Chama, two rabbis, turn around and say, Amar loika isa laila ha yitzra mefta'eu, the Devarim. All that night, his Yetzirah came to him with all sorts of suggestions as what he should do next. Right? Now remember, they're going to marry. Right? He knows that he's in line. There's one guy before him for what's known as the Levirate marriage, Yibum. You familiar with all this? Okay. So basically, Yibum is, there are 4 brothers, right? A, B, C, and D. A marries Sora, who's small and a little bit overweight. That was a thumb joke. He marries Sora. Thank you, Miriam. I thought it was quite good. Anyway, so and what happens is he dies and they don't have any children. Now, when a woman marries a man, she gets her freedom again in one of 2 ways, which is, yeah, when your husband dies, goodbye, that's it, you're free, or he gives you a divorce. So here he's died, but she hasn't had any children. So she's not free in this case. She has to marry one of the 3 remaining brothers, right? B, C, and D. Okay? And when she marries, let's say B, any child that she has, this little child, the first child that she has from B is not called Ben B, is called Benny.
But it's only the first
Benny. What? Only the first child.
And what if the first child's a girl?
Basi.
No, there's that.
Basi. But Benny's much better.
You want Benny?
I've got a son called Benny. What?
I mean, the son is what carries out like the DNA of the father.
I think the daughters carry on the DNA as well.
No, the daughters don't carry on the paternal DNA, only the maternal DNA.
Okay. Still, that's the halacha. Okay? Now, what happens there is, in this case, she's not free until, and of course the idea is, a bit spooky, well, when Ruth marries, who did she marry, remember? Sorry?
No, Machlon.
Before it, she marries Machlon, right? And then Machlon dies. Machlon, as we once talked about this in the Shir, Machlon comes from the Hebrew word mechila, meaning to be forgiven. He was forgiven for what he did wrong because when she marries Boaz and she has a child, the child was?
His child.
Was him.
It was him or was because
It was
his child?
It was his child and it was him. He was reincarnated in, spooky stuff, right? She gave birth to her dead husband. Okay. Women go, right? Horrible stuff. I don't want to get that right. Of course, she gave birth to a baby. The soul in the baby was the dead husband, right? And generally, you find reincarnation occurs very often in families, right? So you could be your great-great-grandmother or great-great-grandfather, etc., etc. And of course, you're named after them because you might well be them. Fine. That's the general. Thank you. That's the general idea of Yibam. Do you get this idea? Yep. And certainly in the anti-orthodox and religious world, they love the fact that a woman who, if he's not going to, the brother that refuses to do Yibam, then instead he has to give her something called chalitza, in which he spits on his shoe. Right? Spits on his shoe. If you spit on somebody or spit at somebody, it's the ultimate expression of contempt, isn't it? Right? What she's stating by that is that you won't bring your brother's dead soul back to the world. You won't give him another chance. That's what that's about. Okay? Fine. So here we've got, again, Ruth, right? Now she has somebody who is next in line to marry her. Okay? And indeed, he's going to bring back the dead soul of her husband. But anyway, there's one before him who was called Ploni Almoni. Okay? So Boaz is next in line. And of course, Ploni Almoni says no. But here they are in bed together. Incidentally, how the marriage occurs when it comes to Yibum is simply cohabitation. Right? They live together. There's no formula and white weddings and confetti. Sorry?
But they did have a marriage.
Oh, later, yeah. There is, I'm saying, but halachically, raw basic law. Yeah, but as I'm saying, but the point is, here she is in his bed, right? And the Gemara, the Medrash says, go back to the language here, if I can just quickly find this, all that night, all that night, his Yetzirah tried to persuade him to consummate the marriage. And indeed, he is going to consummate the marriage. This is going to be married, but do it now. You're a single man. She's a single girl. You want to get married to a woman? She wants to marry a man. And so on and so forth. So therefore, when he was pitched against his Yetzirah, he made an oath. And the oath was, stay with me till the night time, he said, till the morning. And he's invoking the name of Hashem. That gives him the extra strength to withstand not consummating the marriage then, and that comes later, and he did. This is very interesting. Now notice what happens here. According to this Medrash, that the Yetzirah comes and gives them every sort of argument in the world to rationalize and make something which is ultimately wrong, right. And the Gemara, as you also know, says once a person gives into Yetzirah once, twice, three times, it's not wrong anymore. Not only is the thing not wrong, which you know deep down is wrong, it's like a mitzvah. You've convinced yourself that it's the right thing to do. Had Boaz listened to all, and see, the language is very important here. All that night, the Yetzirah had arguments and tried to persuade him. Argument after argument after argument. There was 1,000 reasons. You're a free man, she's free, you want to get married, she's the girl you're going to marry, etc. What's the problem here? So he had to have an extra device to stop him doing it. But you can see the process here. If you let your Yetzirah persuade you, then it becomes, you signed up for it. And it's difficult to get you to admit that you made a mistake at the beginning. You rationalize, you justify your decision. Does that make sense?
In one word, is temptation.
Temptation, that's right. Here is an incredibly interesting insight by somebody called Diane Dooner, who was a Dayan in London. And Diane Dooner is talking, this is in the Sedra of Nossa. The Sedra of Nossa, of course, talks about, well, various things, but chiefly it talks about the Nazir. Tell me something about the Nazir.
They grow their hair?
Yeah, they grow their hair, sort of like, latter-day hippies.
So for a month, they do it for a month.
Generally a month.
Wine.
Sorry?
And
And they have to bring a chatas for that. They don't drink water. So the idea is they're giving themselves a spiritual boost. Okay? And they're striving for the level of not just the Kohen, but the Kohen Gadol. Right, so you're not allowed to come into contact with a dead body, even that of your closest family, whereas a Kohen could. And no haircuts as a symbol. That's a bit complicated why, but let's keep that going. Both a man and a woman, incidentally. A woman can be a Nazir as well, a Nazirah. And also no wine. Okay, that's the story. Fine. So, in the story of the Nazir appears in the Seder of Nosai. Guess what the Haftarah of Nosai is? Shimshon, the most famous of all the Nazirim, right? Who got his strength from his long hair, all that. Samson and Delilah. Hollywood even made it into a movie, etc. Everybody knows roughly what the story is all about. Okay, so what's the connection between the two? You would think, obviously, the Nazir. But he says more than that. There's also the story of the Saita. What's the story of the Saita? What's the Saita? A husband accuses his wife of adultery, believes his wife has committed adultery, and goes to the wife and says to the wife, I accuse you, and then she's brought to the Beis HaMikdash. She's brought to the Beis HaMikdash, and there's a whole rather unpleasant, this is chapter 6 in the Seder of Nossa, a very unpleasant ceremony, if that's the right word, process that goes through, which has gone through, and if she denies it and is guilty, then what happens to her? Yeah, so you take God's name, you write it on a piece of paper, a piece of parchment, you put it in water, etc. She drinks it and she dies. How does she die?
Blows up.
Yeah, she blows up, right? Boom, she dies, okay. And the guy who committed adultery with her also dies, same way. Even if he's over in New York, right? She's in Tel Aviv, right? And, well, not Tel Aviv, she's going to be in Jerusalem. And she explodes. right? But he's in New York. He's forgotten about this. This was, this was 6 months ago. Yeah, no problem. I was drunk, and suddenly, he's gone. Okay, so that's what happens. Okay, so if you were such a person, God forbid, if we had such a person here, and I say to you, I can be the Kohen Gadol, and I say to you, drink this. So you're denying it. Just drink this, and we'll soon see. And you are guilty. What would you do? Not drink it, right? In which case you're admitting your guilt. So there are this is how it works. If your husband accuses you falsely, right? So the woman is absolutely innocent. Then, and she drinks this stuff and she's innocent, nothing happens except a gazillion blessings. A gazillion brachas. If she didn't have children, now she'll have children. If her childbirths were difficult, they would be painless. If she had one child, she'll have twins. I mean, if it was, if you had, weak children, they'd be strong. The best, everything could happen. Great. That's if you're not guilty. If you're guilty, gaboomf, right? You're out of there. Okay. So that's the two choices. There's a third. What's the third?
Get divorced.
Admit it. If you admit the adultery, then you don't have to drink the wine or the water. You don't have to drink this water. You'll have to be divorced. But there's no witnesses that saw you committing adultery, so nobody's going to kill you for this. You have to divorce your husband. You can't marry the guy that you committed the adulterous affair with, right? But you could marry anybody else. Okay? You might well do teshuvah. You might be, change your life and be forgiven for your previous adultery. You marry somebody else, so it might have been more money. You might go on to have a happy life. So here's the question. Who in their right mind will deny it? Do you get the question? And the point is, he says an amazing thing. Listen, if you do it, if you admit it, then you could even do tshuva. We could ask, how could you understand that somebody could deny the truth? And he writes, but you should know, to admit the truth when you're going to be embarrassed by the truth, when your shortcomings are going to be displayed to everybody, including yourself, is so difficult you'd rather die than do it. It's so difficult rather than die and do it. Amazing.
Suicide when certain things happen.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, the Gemara says to embarrass somebody in public is the worst of all. And that's the amazing thing in the story of the Haftarah as well. What's the story of the Haftarah? Listen to this. V'yar malach Hashem eli isha. So this is now, we're talking about Shimshon's mother. So an angel of God appears to the woman, v'yomer eleh, and he says to her, Hine no at akor. Now you are barren, right? V'lo yolded, and you have not had a child. V'risa v'yolded ben, and you are going to become pregnant, and you're going to have a child. That's nice. So that's a different story. So she rushes to her husband, and what does she tell him? She turns to the husband, and she says, a man appeared to me who's like an angel of God, and he says, I'm going to have a child. But that's not what he said to her. What did he say to her? He said, now you're barren, and now you're going to have a child. But when she reported that to her husband, he said to me, now I'm going to have a child. Do you see the change?
Yeah.
Now, what was the story? So look, in those days, they didn't have MRIs and, advanced gynecological, investigations, etc. They didn't know about fallopian tubes, at least not medically. And so therefore, if a couple, if a husband and his wife are not conceiving children, there are two possibilities. Actually, there are three. Possibility number one, the problem is
One.
his. Or both. Right? They didn't know. So therefore, at that point, there was a degree of distress or discomfort between the couple. Whose fault is it? Is he barren? If you use the word for man, I'm not sure. Or is she barren? Sterile, I mean. You get the idea? Can he not have children or can she not have children? And now the angel appears. And the angel says to her, now, I'll read it to you again. What did he say to her? Interesting for Yoma. Aleho, he said to her, he said to her, no, now, at Akora. At this moment, you're barren, but loyal, and you can't have a child. Well, Harisa, but you're going to have a child. Well, loy. But when she came and told her husband, he said, I'm going to have a child. She missed out the fact that he said, you're barren.
Well, she was embarrassed probably.
But what's the problem? What is the problem? Okay, it's not her fault. Choose barrenness. It's just that, and anyway, no, there's no problem anymore. An angel just told me I'm going to have a baby. Wow, look, so who cares whose fault it is? Problem over. Problem solved. But she can't bring herself to say it was her fault. But you still can't bring yourself to say it's your fault. It's very, very difficult to confront the truth. If you feel that the truth is embarrassing to you, very, very difficult. Now, in this week's Sedra, Devorim, there is a beautiful and expert explanation as to how you get people to see the truth about themselves. Because it's not easy. It's the most difficult thing in the world to get somebody to see the truth. And to confront the truth about yourself, if there is any because it's so difficult, if there's any possibility of denying it, then with these two examples, the likelihood is that you're going to deny it, or you're not. If a woman would rather drink the stuff and die in the most horrific way rather than say, yes, it's true, if this rabbi here, there's a zillion reasons to justify it, he's got to make an oath in order not to, it's difficult to admit the truth. Now in the Sedra of Devorim, Moshe Rabbeinu is saying his farewell address to the Jewish people, and he wants them to confront the truth about their shortcomings. How easy is that going to be? Not easy. So here we have advice from a master, from an expert, on how to get somebody to see mistakes they've made. So here we go. This is what this pasuk says. Eila Devorim, these are the words, Asher Dibra Moshe, which Moshe spoke, El Kol Yisrael, to the whole Jewish people, and then it tells you where it was. I'll come to that in a second. Why did it say he spoke to the whole Jewish people? And Rashi says the following. Listen to this Rashi. This is an amazing Rashi. Kol Yisrael, Elo Hachichem Mitzasa. Had he told off or criticized a fraction of the Jewish people, just a section of the Jewish people, Elo Hoyesh B'Shuk, the rest of the guys who were down in the bars, in the clubs would have said, Atem Ayisim Shomem Mi Ben Amr V'Lo Hashivim Dover. You let him say that about you and you didn't give him any answer? You didn't answer back? If we'd been there, we would have told them. Nah, it's not true, you got it wrong. Right? So they would have answered back. Moshe knows that if you get somebody to confront the truth about themselves, to face up to the truth about themselves, that's difficult. You certainly don't want the whole thing to be undone 5 minutes later by somebody turning around and saying, yeah, it's not so bad, not such a big deal. And therefore you make sure that everybody is there. And that's what Rashi goes on to say. You're all here, anybody's got an answer, let's hear it. So that's the first important thing. Don't put in all the work to try and get somebody to see a flaw within themselves and have all that work fall to bits because somebody undoes it. And of course the purpose of getting somebody to see the flaw within themselves is in order to correct it. We're not talking here about destructive criticism. You're just enjoying telling somebody that they're basically stupid, or they're basically fat, or they're basically jealous, or they're basically, insecure, or whatever it is that you're doing. No, we're talking about you don't want the person to be jealous or angry or whatever it is. You're giving them criticism because you want to try and help the person. And you only do that if you feel what about the person? Love. If you love the person, okay? And if you love the person, you want to give the advice that's going to cause the person to change in a positive direction. So it would be rather ridiculous if that's your ambition to allow that to become squandered just a few minutes later by somebody else who will undo all your good work. So make sure everybody's there. That's the first thing. Then it says, and Rashi says there, since this is words of criticism and reproof, and here he mentions all the places where they provoked and angered Hashem, then therefore Moshe only hinted where they'd gone wrong by mentioning the places where they'd gone wrong, not what they did there. It's a hint, right? And if you've ever done anything wrong or think of something embarrassing that you've done in your life. I think I told you about the time I went to the wedding and I knocked over the wedding cake. Did I mention that to you once, right?
No.
Oh, yes. I once knocked down a wedding cake when I was speaking at a wedding. There was the long rectangular table at the front, small square table, and when the chossan let go of my hand after I was finished speaking, I turned around, brushed against the table, and there was a funny noise. Boom. I took one step, and there was a wave of laughter. I turned around and there was this magnificent work of art Exactly. A magnificent work of art, which so just a few seconds before had been adorning the wedding, now lying, looking a little bit like Afghanistan on a bad day, be quiet, on the floor, okay? Now, whenever I'm in England, if I drive past that shul, guess what comes into my mind? The cake, right? If it's really embarrassing, if you feel you've done something wrong, you just have to mention the place where you did it. Do you remember when that subway ride went, or just the word cake? I'm a cakeophobe. Just mention the word wedding cake and watch me dive under the nearest table. Take it away, take it away. I don't take it. You panic, okay? So just mentioning the thing is enough in its own right in order to evoke a response to get you to change. Does that make sense? Okay. So, here are the places. So he says, right, here's the hint, places. So Moshe says, Me'ever Yarden, over on the other side of the Jordan River. Bamidbar, in the desert. Ba'arova, on the plain. Malsuf, opposite the Suf, Red Sea. Ben Poran, Red Sea. Ben Poran, Ben Teufel, Velovan, B'chatzeres, V'dizov. Aha. That's a lot. Have you got GPS in your car? Turn right here. Left here. And they're all, incidentally, very polite. I had a Russian driver who took me here tonight because my wife's got the car. And he's not speaking good English yet, he told me. He here for your half, but you speak too quick for me. So maybe you speak slow. I said, okay, I'll speak slow. And then so we're turning left, and this little GPS said, left turn. And I said, isn't she the perfect wife? He said, what? I said, isn't she the perfect wife? Wife? Housewife. Yeah. I said, because if your wife's in the car and you make the wrong turn, she says, idiot, it's left, right? But the GPS, she's so delightful. Turn left. And if you go right, she just says, turn left here. It's always forgiven. There's not like, you fool, you complete twit. She doesn't say that. So he laughed and laughed. Yeah, he gets the idea. Right. And of course, my GPS is called Jane, incidentally. You can choose the different voices. We have Jane in the car. She's very sweet, Jane. Very forgiving. Anyway, so basically, the nice thing about Jane is she knows exactly where to go. But this seems a rather lot of information. It was Bamidbar, but as Rashi says, no, it wasn't. This is a list of the places the Jewish people got it wrong. Made mistakes. Fine. So what are they? So first of all, let's just remind ourselves. Rashi says some of the places that what was the first thing that the Jewish people did wrong when they left Egypt? Sorry? Oh, go to camp much later. Yeah, later. Just when they left Egypt. Right, leave Egypt with me.
Complained about not having water.
That's the second. What was the first thing to do?
Complained about not having food.
No. Good, right, good. So 1, 2, 3, come to that. Okay, so they come to the Yam Suf. I'll be Moshe, you can be the Jews, right? See, Egyptian army behind us. And at that point, you all became extremely English. You all became English gentlemen and ladies. After you. No, I insist. After you. No, after you. Nobody wanted to go in until Nashon ben Aminadab goes into the water, and then they all go in. So the first thing is they get, if you forgive the pun, cold feet when it comes to the Yam Suf. Then they go through the Yam Suf 3 days later, then there's no food, there's no water, at least a pomegranate, it's like a blue ribbon, something, right? So that's that. And then there was, of course, there was the golden calf, and that wasn't the only rebellion in the 40 years of the Jewish people in the desert, was it? No. So Moshe Rabbeinu here only mentions it in a hint, says Rashi. There are two problems. Later on in the Sedra, and certainly next week's Sedra, he gives them for exactly where they went wrong, what they did wrong. There's no hiding. It's not a hint. It's straight out there. So what's Rashi talking about? Of course, the answer is, if you ever go to a posh restaurant, I was in a posh restaurant recently, and the fellow who was our host, this is just to make it look fuller than it is. If you could all move around this empty seats. And I can say, oh, the seats were full tonight. There was, 300 ladies.
They're invisible.
They're invisible ladies. Hello. The diets are working very well. What was I saying? Lost the place. Sorry? Posh restaurant. And the fellow who had taken me is an expert in wine. So what he did was, the fellow said to him, what wines do you have? And he did a lot of wine, so he said, I'll have the whatever the name of the wine was. He says, is it the 2008 or the 2009? So the fellow said, I'm not sure, sir. And he went away and he said, it's the 2009. Said the fellow, we'll try. So I'm not such a balk. Now, if it was whiskey, that'd be different. So he comes back and he goes, it will do, he said. So we had the 2008 and the 2009. I hope you forgive me that I only had the 2009. I mean, you'll probably walk out at this point. And he said, but basically you want to taste to make sure that the stuff's okay. Certainly if you're going to pour milk into your coffee, sniff first, right? If it smells like cheese, maybe you shouldn't pour it into your coffee. In other words, Moshe Rabbeinu is testing the waters. Are they willing, but just in a hint, are they willing to accept the criticism? And then if they're willing to accept the criticism, then you can go on to being more specific where they went wrong. Okay. One other thing here, before I tell you something very, very brilliant, I have the time doing, and that is, it's interesting that it says straight after this when this was. So it says, when was this? It was Vahib Arbaim Shana, 40 years, Ashti Osa L'Chodesh, in the 11th month, the 11th month, Be'echad L'Chodesh, and the first of the month, Dibur Moshe spoke to the whole Jewish people. Why does it tell you the date so specifically? And again, interestingly, because he's about to die. Moshe is about to die. And you're more willing to accept the words of somebody you love when you're not going to see them anymore than, if you're going to see them the next day and the next day. It makes a difference. So therefore, at that point, Moshe waits till the end before he gives them this what for. So they'll accept the Musar. So they'll accept the criticism. There's no point in giving somebody criticism that's going to make things worse. And if you criticize somebody and they go, get lost, then it's made it worse. So he wants to make sure it's not worse. Okay, so let's go through this list. So the problem is, it said there that Moshe Rabbeinu speaks to the Jewish people, Be'ever Yarden, over the Jordan River, Bamidbar, in the desert. Have you ever driven up along the eastern border of the state of Israel, maybe from Jerusalem to Sfas, and you look across to Jordan? You can look straight into Jordan. And that's where Moshe Rabbeinu was. It says, on the other side of the river, in the desert. What's the problem? It wasn't a desert. It's a verdant green plain. And there's huge amounts of produce, tomatoes and vines and stuff growing there. It's not a green plain. So what's it talking about? So, my favourite commentator, the Alshich, he says something absolutely brilliant stuff here. And he says as follows. Think about this. Rashi says all of the places that the Jewish people had rebelled are being hinted at here. We agreed that, right? And when I asked you, you gave me point number 2. Somebody else, can't remember, gave me point number 1. Who gave me point number 1? Well done. But that's not the order in the Pasuk. The Pasuk starts with point number 2. Bamidbar. That's when they came into the desert. 3 days later, there was no water, no food. So, what are we doing here? I thought we were going to have a pomegranate. And there's a rebellion. Why not start with the first one, which was the one about when they came to the Yam Suf, and they all became English gentlemen? Wouldn't that be the sensible place to start? Why not follow the rebellions in chronological order, historically, as they occurred? But it doesn't. Why not? So here's something crucially important. If you want, with love and affection, to get somebody to change their behaviour, we've already said, you've got to make sure that it's going to be effective. They've got to know. He only says it in a hint, says Rashi, to give them COVID. You must make sure that the person that you are criticising, that their self-respect is intact after you have, given them the criticism. Don't leave somebody, like a shriveled piece of fruit or a piece of ash. You've got to be on their side. But more important as well, you've got to make sure that when you get them to confront the truth, they don't say, yes, you're right, and then add one more word. But. Well done. But is the most deadly word in the language. Right? If you can say, but, I did it, but, you're not accepting the criticism, are you? You rationalize it. Yeah, I did it, but it was justified for whatever reason. Moshe Rabbeinu knows that. And Hashem knows that. So when he criticizes them, he doesn't go in the chronological order. Why not? So the chronological order would be yours, the one that you said was first, right? The Jewish people come to the Yam Suf and they all become English gentlemen. So he could say to them, Now, when you first went out from Egypt, you rebelled at the Yam Suf. They would say, well, it's true. But what do you expect from us? We were slaves in Egypt for 210 years. Hashem put us in Egypt for 210 years. It was ingrained in our DNA. All of what Egypt was and their beliefs and their idolatry. We worship their gods as well. We all know that. Do you really expect us in the course of 1 year for all that to be uprooted? Even if we did see the 10 big miracles. Yeah, but it's going to take us a long time to overcome the effects of that. So we did it. But you've got to understand, what more could you expect from us? We were new to being religious, new to being frum, new to keeping the mitzvahs. So Hashem doesn't start there. He knows there's going to be a but. If there's a but, the person's not accepting the criticism. So he starts with the next one. Because in the next one, it was 3 days after they'd been through the Yam Suf. Now, when they went through the Red Sea, as you all know, that was quite a big miracle. At that point, they said, Ze Keli Va'anvehu. This is my God, and I will worship him. And they saw the greatest of miracles. According to one opinion, it was 12 different pathways to reach the tribes. The salt water walls had springs of fresh water pouring out so they could drink as they went past. Then you had little apple trees growing up. And the seabed came up to meet them. It was fantastic, right? So you can't say anymore that your belief in Hashem wasn't strong enough, which would be what you said before. Not only that, there was some guy called Yisro and some woman called Rachel. And Rachel was a prostitute. And yet when she heard about that was enough to make her go on and become a convert to Judaism. In fact, eventually Yeshua's wife. Right, so that's really amazing. Well, if they just heard about it and that convinced them, certainly the Jewish people who experienced that, so they no longer have a but. So Moshe Rabbeinu is taking away the ability to say but. And you take away the ability to say but, then your criticism will get through. So what comes next? Do you want to do some more of this? This is good fun. Oh, here we go. Listen to this. You enjoy this. Okay. So in order for that not to happen, then he says, Bamidbar. Okay. They were in the desert and they had no food, etc. So what comes next? So therefore, to start there, what's the but going to be there? The but's going to be there. Look, okay, it's true. 3 days after the Yam Suf, yeah, we're convinced about God. And we did rebel. But who wouldn't? If you don't have any food, if you don't have any water, you're desperate. We were desperate. We had nothing. That's why the next one says...
They had when they were slaves.
Sorry?
What?
Well, they obviously had enough food or they wouldn't be there alive. They had the basics. But in a desert, you get nothing. So no, you're right, it's not true. You're right, it's not true. But if your Yetzer Hara allows you to justify it with a but, that's why I gave you that example before. That's why Boaz has got every but and every excuse in the world. You're going to marry her anyway, and she's in your bed tonight, and she's the person you're supposed to marry, and marriage here is only... Anyway, and it's, when it's a Yibam, all you do is consummate the marriage in the normal cohabitation way anyway, and that's it. So there's nothing. There's a million excuses. We're trying to get rid of the buts, the excuses. Okay? Or rather, Moshe is. So therefore, he says, what's the next one? He says, Bamidbar, Ba'arova. On the plain. What's that talking about? Al-Ovana Shittim. That talks about the story of Shittim. Shittim was when, of course, the Jews got involved in the idolatry at Baal Pa'ar. Do you remember that bit? Yes. Bamidbar? The Jewish people are just about to go into the border of Israel, and then that's when Korach comes, the rebellion of Korach, but before then the Jewish people worshipped the gods of Midian, and then been seduced by the women and all that sort of stuff in Midian. And at that point, that was Ba'arova. The apostle says Ba'arova. So Hashem knows that their but is going to be, we were desperate, we had nothing, there was no food, anybody would rebel then, we were desperate. So he says, Barova. At that point, the Jewish people had just conquered 2 kingdoms, 2 kings. They had tons of cattle, they had everything under the sun, they were really rich. And yet, they still rebelled. You still rebelled when you had everything, and you rebelled. So what's your excuse? Your excuse in the desert is going to be, it's only because we had nothing. We were desperate, we rebelled. The implication, if we had everything, we'd never rebel. Well, but then, at Arava, when you did rebel. True, that's true. But it's because we had so much. We had so much that our lives were lives of leisure. You know, and there's a phrase in English, the devil makes work for idle hands. Have you heard that phrase? Maybe it's an English phrase. It was an American one. Right, it's people who have got too much time in their hands and not enough challenges in their lives, often, get themselves into serious messes. When I give my share on why do bad things happen to really good people, I often ask my audience beforehand, put your hands up here if you've never had any trouble in your life. Guess what? Yep, no hands go up. But some people are born with the proverbial silver spoon in their mouth. They're born into hugely rich families. Looking around here, I can see this applies to all of you. Multimillionaire fathers, etc. Stretch limousines waiting outside, as I know, for all of you to take you home after the share. And if anybody can give me a lift, I'd be very grateful. And so on and so forth. Right. Very often when people have lives of leisure lead to all sorts of disasters. We need challenge in our life. So therefore, that's the argument. They could say, you know what? It's because we had so much that caused us to rebel. That's true. We did rebel at Arova, achievement, but it's because we had so much. Because our lives were so unstressed. We know challenges. To which he says, fine. And the next one, Malsuf. What about the Amsuf? Go back to the Amsuf. Now we'll start there. When you were under pressure, when your life was full of pressure, it wasn't a life of, nothing. It was pressure with an army chasing after you, rebelled again. That's why I put Malsuf there. To which they're going to say, I hear, this is very clever, this. But the reason we rebelled there is not what you think. You see, but the situation was, we didn't think we had any merits left. We had just gone out of Egypt. Now, you probably know this. If you ask Hashem to help you, he looks at your bank account in Shemaim. Do you know that? Right. So if you've got a lot of savings, a lot of mitzvahs, a lot of zechusim, you can draw on them. If you don't have a lot of mitzvahs, a lot of merits, a lot of zechusim, then the bank manager might not say yes. It's always a good idea to invest before you draw out. Does that make sense? Yes. I'm sure both presidential candidates will tell us this in the months to come when it talks about the economy. Right? We've got to get going. Oh, fine. Okay. But they're going to turn around and say, we didn't think we had any exclusive. We thought we'd used up every merit, every justification that God could give to the Beis Din Shel the heavenly court, for taking us out through the 10 plagues in Egypt and going through it. We thought, that's why we rebelled. It was our humility. To which he says very cleverly, the next bit, Ben Poren and Ben Teufel. What was Ben Poren? Interesting. The journey, Ben Poren and Ben Teufel, that's when they came when they left Har Sinai and they came to the border of Israel. The Rashi says it was a journey of 11 days. How long did it take them to make that journey? 3 days. Now, I don't actually know, I can't remember how fast you walk. Do you know how fast the average person walks? 1? Is that, so you say 3 miles an hour? Yeah, 3 miles an hour, probably. Okay, 3 miles an hour. Okay. So if I'm walking at normal pace and I'm looking at the wall, without thinking about it, I know, looking at that wall, how quickly that wall is going to move from my sight as I move forward. Suppose it went 3 times the speed. Pew! Because if a journey of 11 days I achieve in 3 days, then the scenery must have been flying past me. Must it not? I'm walking in the middle of the miracle. So you can't say that, God wasn't there, I didn't have any merits, God wouldn't do a miracle for me, which is what they're claiming. That was the but at the Yam Suf. You were walking in the middle of a miracle and still you rebelled. So Moshe Rabbeinu goes through this stage by stage, pointed to every single time they could say but. Stopping the buts, because if you don't, then the person's not going to listen. There's an excuse, and then you're not going to get through. Now, we could go through the whole lot since we've run out of time. But every single one of the places is constructed out of order to stop them saying but. Each one is a challenge to the excuse they could have given. Now, you want to say that? Well, what about this one here? Do you get the idea? Brilliant. This is absolutely brilliant. Because there's only any point in criticizing somebody if the person is going to improve. If your criticism is going to make the person worse, don't criticize. Don't criticize. There's no point in doing that. But you want them to improve. At least if you're going to be involved in somebody's life personally, try and get them to improve in such a way that your efforts are going to bear fruit. So, do it in a way which gives them kavod, as Rashi said. It's only a hint to give them kavod, because the self-respect, you have to leave the person feeling good about themselves afterwards. I've told you 1,000 times, and I can't resist telling you again. One of my teachers, his father was a Rosh Yeshiva in London, and he was called Moshe Schneider. And if a boy had done something wrong in the yeshiva, he would take the boy outside for a walk. Incidentally, when he was talking to the boys in Gemara and Talmud, they would often go for a walk together down the street. And then he would put his arm around the boy's shoulder, and then he would say, before he got to the criticism, he would say, if you go into a garage to collect your car, which is being repaired, and the mechanic comes out from underneath the car, and as he's coming out from underneath it, a drop of oil falls onto his shirt or his overalls, will you say to him, you've got a stain in your overalls? Would you say that to a mechanic? Why not? Because they're filthy. I mean, there are, the Latin phrase is verschmutzt. They are filthy all the time, right? So, of course not. Whereas, if you go to a wedding, and the Kala is wearing a beautiful white dress, and let's say there's a little black thread just there on the shoulder, or the Chossen's got a little bit of dandruff just there in the lapel, will you point that out to them? Well, of course. Just take that away and the rest is perfect. With that introduction, he would say to the boy, I saw you doing something. I heard you say something. It's spoiling you. It's spoiling you. You hear how brilliant this is? Psychologically, what's he done? He's taken the boy outside so nobody else saw him criticized. Right? So there's no embarrassment. He's got his arm around the boy's shoulder. I'm your Rov. I'm your Rosh Yeshiva. I love you. I'm on your side. And then he's assuring him that apart from this one thing where the boy has slipped up, the Rosh Yeshiva's got a very high opinion of him. This is spoiling you. That builds up the willingness of the person to accept the criticism. Because you only want to criticize somebody if it's going to produce results. But if it's not, then what's the point? Make sure if you can influence somebody's life, you do it in a way that's likely to bring back the results you want and not have the reverse.
Provided you have the wisdom. Provided you have the wisdom.
Provided you have the wisdom. The Talmud says nobody knows how to give criticism anymore, and nobody knows how to accept it anymore. So indeed, it has to be it takes a lot of thought. You should always think very carefully before, and that's why, those who have been to my shirim over the last year will know, there's only really two things I teach, and one of them is Asa L'cha Rav. Nobody sees themselves objectively. And if you want to criticize somebody, in all probability you've got a relationship with them. Very few people walk up to complete strangers in the street saying, you just dropped that cigarette butt, pick it up. You're probably not going to do that, because you probably like your nose in the position that it's in and not on the other side of your head. So you're unlikely to criticize a complete stranger. You probably, if you want to criticize somebody, most times they've done something to you. Right? So are you the best person to criticize? Maybe not. So you definitely, here you want somebody to advise you how to go about this. Asa L'cha Rav, that's very important.